Can your spouse literally sue you for not having a baby? Well, the law says maybe. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're tearing away the lace, the cake, and the flowers of a wedding day. And we're looking at the cold, hard legal machinery underneath because, marriage isn't just a romance, right? It's a legally binding contract. When you stand up there and say, I do, you're actually signing up for a very specific set of legal obligations. So let's dive right into this and unpack the actual rights and obligations of the husband and wife.
To make all this easy to remember, we've set this explainer up like a visual mind map. We're going to cover core marital obligations, suing your own spouse, the 3 joint duties, professions and family debts, and finally the immoral profession exception. Let's get to it.
Starting off with Section 1, Core Marital Obligations, or the legal reality of wedding vows.
So when couples are standing at the altar, they're making these beautiful, romantic promises. But Article 68 actually translates those promises into strict legal obligations. You aren't just promising, you are legally bound to live together, observe mutual love, respect, fidelity, and render mutual help and support. It's the whole shebang. Breaking these actually carries real legal weight.
But wait, there's actually one more essential obligation that isn't explicitly listed in Article 68, and it's a big one. In the fascinating case of Chi Ming Soy versus CA, the Supreme Court explicitly stated, and I quote, "Procreation is also an essential marital obligation." Let that sink in. Getting married legally implies a duty to build a family. It's like the state is essentially acting as a third party to your marriage.
Moving to Section 2, Suing your own spouse. What exactly happens when these obligations are broken?
So naturally, you might be wondering, if the law says you must love and respect your spouse, can you sue them for damages if they just don't? Well, generally speaking, no. You can't sue for damages merely because of a basic breach of a marital obligation. For instance, in Ty versus CA, the court ruled a wife can't sue just because her husband filed a baseless annulment. Basically, the courts don't want to micromanage your relationship. However, there is a major exception. In Ten Chavez versus Escano, the Supreme Court actually allowed damages against a wife for extreme desertion and securing an invalid divorce. So, extreme abandonments of the marital contract, yeah, that can definitely open the door to damages.
Now, Article 72 builds on this with a very specific bad faith penalty. Here's how it works. If a spouse maliciously refuses to comply with their marital duties, and the couple happens to have a separation of property regime, that erring spouse can literally be sued for damages under the Civil Code. Make no mistake, the law can and absolutely will reach into your separate pockets if you act in bad faith.
All right, Section 3, the 3 joint duties, also known as the 3 J's of marriage.
Pivoting away from the conflict side of things for a second, let's look at the day-to-day, logistical responsibilities of running a marriage. A great way to remember this is the 3 J's: joint support, joint management, and joint fixing of the family domicile. Simply put, both spouses share the responsibility to support the family, manage the household, and decide together where to live. Neither person holds dictatorial power here. It is very much a joint legal effort.
Which brings us to Section 4, professions and family debts. Let's talk about the business of marriage.
Marriage is essentially an economic partnership, right? So, how does the law handle your career? Well, the law dictates a really empowering, explicit right. A spouse can exercise any legitimate profession, occupation, or business completely without the consent of the other spouse. You absolutely do not need permission to pursue your career. It's a real game changer. But as we all know, with working comes expenses. So the general rule for conjugal debt is that obligations, even those incurred before you got married, are charged to the shared property as long as they actually benefit the family. Think of it like this. If the family eats from the fruits of the business, the family shares the burden of the business debts. Make sense, right?
And now for our final part. Section 5, the immoral profession exception. Penalizing the bad faith spouse.
So what happens when a profession isn't legitimate? This is really the climax of our legal mind map, Article 73. To trigger this severe legal penalty, 3 very specific conditions have to be met. First, the profession is seriously invalid or immoral. Second, the innocent spouse had no knowledge of it, meaning they couldn't object. And third, a benefit accrued before any objection was actually made. If all 3 of these are met, well, the general rule of shared debt goes completely out the window.
The ultimate result is this really fascinating penalty. The resulting obligations are enforced solely against the separate property of the erring spouse. And here's the kicker, that holds true even if the family actually benefited from the money.
The law intentionally protects the innocent spouse's share. It ensures you cannot use community property to shield the debts of seriously immoral activities.
Wow. Okay, we have traced the map from the core obligations of love all the way down to financial penalties for immoral professions. As you can see, marriage is undeniably about love, for sure, but it is heavily, heavily governed by law. Every single vow has a legal shadow. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to cement this reality check. Are you ready for the contract? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.